Hello again. This video I'm going to be talking a bit about Daniel chapter 9. I'm going into verses 24 through 27, and then I'm also going to be talking about some things in Revelation, just sort of tying in with this. So to begin, Daniel 9:24. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. So before I begin, I suppose I should say, this is a prophecy that was given to Daniel by Gabriel, who we will know as the angel who also told Mary that she would have a child who would be the Messiah. Also, the angel who told, his name is escaping me at the moment, but it was the priest who was the father of John the Baptist. He told him that John the Baptist would be born. So this is a prophecy that he gave to Daniel while he was still over in Babylon, I believe. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city, to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So going into this 70 weeks here, to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity. This very much ties in with the ministry of Jesus in his life. He came to do all these things, most notably is reconciliation for iniquity. And this actually, I just noticed this right now, but you'll notice in one of the Psalms when David is saying, "Blessed is the man whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. Blessed is the man to whom the Lord imputeth not iniquity." You'll notice it's the same three here when it says to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity. And later on, I believe it was the Apostle Paul, he referenced that psalm that David was saying that we would have the sure mercies of David. I believe you'll find that in Romans chapter 4, that reference. So this is actually very interesting. So we have that spoken of in the Psalms, almost as a prophecy, and also, just explanation of what happened in David's life. We have it here in Daniel talking about what's going to happen in these 70 weeks in the ministration of the Messiah. We'll get to that part in another verse or two. And then we have that again in Romans being mentioned, and it's always these, like the three different forms of it. The transgression, to cross over the line, into unrighteousness. The sin, which is to miss the mark, you should have done better, but you fell short, you missed it. And the iniquity, more of that inward heart problem that you get because of unrighteousness. So in all of these things, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, so the righteousness of Christ being brought into the world, and to seal up the vision and the prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So I'm not 100% sure on the seal up the vision and prophecy, but I think it is sort of to conclude, to finalize all the vision and prophecy, just to bring it all fully to a final end and conclusion. And to anoint the most holy, and I think this is again referring to Jesus. And just ultimately all prophecies are in one way or another, all true prophecies I should say, are in one way or another about Jesus. So, and he is really, God is the most holy, so he came here for that purpose. But yeah, there's probably more depth in that one that I'm not seeing quite at the moment, but moving on. Verse 25, Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. Excuse me. So this is referencing. There's some debate about which commandment to restore and rebuild Jerusalem is actually meant. But the most, well, I should say, the usual interpretation of what it means by the weeks is weeks of years. So you have out of 70 weeks, it will be 69 weeks between the commandment to rebuild Jerusalem and the coming of the Messiah the Prince. So there are a couple of different commandments to rebuild Jerusalem. I'm not remembering exactly when they were at the exact moment, but I do know that with at least with one of them, if you actually line it up, 69 weeks of years, you actually come out to the time of Jesus' ministry. And, I mean, even if you were to use the other one, then you would have another problem where there was no Messiah that came after that part. So, I mean, ultimately the options are either Jesus or no one is the Messiah, just based on this prophecy alone, because the timing only works out to the coming of Jesus and his ministry. Let me see. And the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. I believe the book of Nehemiah references, or I should say records, much of the history of that time. This would be the time when you had people who were trying to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, and, they were rebuilding the city. But then at the same time that you had people building, they had to have a whole lot of people who were standing guard, who had swords and all this, because the people who were around about didn't like the idea that they were rebuilding it, and so they were kind of in danger of being attacked. It was very troubled times. So this is a prophecy, I should say this part of the prophecy was actually fulfilled, I believe, in the days of Nehemiah and I think Amos, but I'm not 100% certain on that particular part, but there was another prophet that dealt with that time. So anyway, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. So, then we have these 62 weeks until the Messiah who came at the time of the 69 weeks. You have, I think actually reading this right now, that 62 weeks might actually be like the literal length of the ministry of Jesus on the earth. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look more into that to be conclusive, but then we have the Messiah will be cut off, and this is an expression that is commonly considered to mean he'll be killed, but not for himself. So he dies, but it is not for his own self, but it's for others. This is expounded on in Isaiah chapter 53, the suffering servant. And so he's cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Now in this, we get back into what happened in 70 AD. So, we've had the city has been rebuilt at this point. The Messiah has come. He's been cut off, but not for himself. And so what comes to pass afterwards in 70 AD is the destruction of the city and the sanctuary, the holy temple. And so this is all destroyed in accordance with this particular prophecy. And so we can infer something here about what it's saying, the prince that shall come. So these people of the prince that shall come would be Romans. And so we'll go on, and then it goes on a little bit to describe a bit more about this prince that shall come. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And this is where we get the idea in some circles of Daniel's 70th week, or the time of Jacob's trouble is another reference point for it. So he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So there's a little bit more to unpack with this, so let me see. So here we go. And if you go into Daniel chapter 11, it's making reference again to this same prince, the abomination that makes it desolate. This reference in Daniel chapter 9:27. We also find this again in Daniel 11, verses 31. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and they shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries, but the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. And they that understand among the people shall instruct many, yet they shall fall by the sword, and by flame, by captivity, and by spoil many days. So here we have just another description of this prince that shall come. When it says the abomination that makes it desolate in Daniel 9 is something that is actually put into place in the place of the sanctuary. So the most common interpretation of this is that it is some kind of an idol. And so this is something that, so we have a Roman prince of some kind or another, and people stand on his part, in his stead, to place some abomination. And in the Old Testament, an idol is an abomination, and it is something that you would place somewhere. And so there's a strong correlation here to the idea that the abomination that makes desolate is some kind of an idol. And this is where we get into a bit of Revelation. So the first part we're going to go to is Romans chapter... I'm going to start in Romans chapter 13, I think, actually. Actually, I'm going to move on first, just going more with the Roman connection here. In Revelation chapter 17, we have mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So this is something to keep note of. This is the mother of harlots and abominations. We were just talking about the abomination that makes desolate. And let's see, so the description, Revelation 17, verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And that part is going to come important in a little bit. If you go down to verse 9, it says, And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. So if you look at it this way, there is one city that is commonly, colloquially referred to around the world as the city of 7 hills, and that is the city of Rome itself. And so when we look back to Daniel chapter 9 again, how it is the people of the prince that shall come, the people who are going to place the abomination that makes desolate, were the ones who destroyed the city in 70 AD, then we see it's Roman. And again, the mother of harlots and abominations is the city on 7 mountains. Rome is considered the city on 7 hills or 7 mountains. So you have that right there. Just looking up, it's looking like it's coming out Rome again in Revelation, which again describes the end of the world. And so, where was I? All right, so sorry, I didn't want to miss this part. And so an interesting thing is, even if you were to look at the Catholic catechisms with regards to Revelation chapter 17, they also agree that Revelation 17 is talking about Rome, even. They would make a distinction and say that it was pagan Rome and not the papal Rome, but we'll get to that. My main disagreement with that I'll get to, well, it's basically this. Revelation is describing the future end of the world. Like, this is the prophecy, the final prophecy, one might say. And we see, quite frankly, that it is a future event because the abomination that makes desolate has not been placed by the Romans in the holy place just yet. So we know that this is a thing that is still yet to come in the future. Now we'll get into Revelation chapter 12, and this is just tying into the 7 heads and 10 horns. Let's see. Revelation 12:3, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. So we have this great red dragon, which matches the description of the beast that the woman, the city of Rome, as it is most likely interpreted. And then we go down to verse 9 of Revelation 12. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now again, this is tying into end times prophecy. There will be a war in heaven. We can also say that as this has not yet occurred, that also further enforces the idea that the depiction of Rome in Revelation 17 is a future depiction of what's going to happen with Rome. And then we go down to Revelation chapter 13, verse 1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And this beast is, as we all generally, I think, know, the Antichrist. And as we go further, it talks about another beast. I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. Let's see. And in verse 14, and he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by the sword, and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So going back again to the abomination of desolation, we know that an idol is an abomination. We know that this idol is going to be placed by the prince that shall come, or I should say the people who stand on his behalf. We know that the people of the prince are Romans, and we see in the end times, tying together, we have the Antichrist, who is depicted in much the same way as the devil, but slightly differently, who is depicted in much the same way as the beast, that the woman, which in Revelation 17, I believe it says, let's see, Revelation 17:18, And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. So we have it tied together. We have the devil, we have the Antichrist, and we have Rome, the great city. All these three together, and then we have those who stand on behalf of the Antichrist, who we can now see the prince that shall come in the end days. And that links all together with the abomination of desolation. So we can discern from these passages that in this 70th week, in the coming Jacob's trouble, there is going to be a Roman Antichrist. People will stand on behalf of the Roman Antichrist to place an idol, an image to the beast, in the sanctuary in Israel and in Jerusalem. And all people will be forced to either worship the beast or die. And when it's, let's see, there was another part in Daniel chapter 9, or maybe it was a little bit further. I'm sorry, I don't want to miss out on this. Yes, so, and then when it goes in Daniel chapter 11, let's see, the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits, verse 32. And they that understand among the people shall instruct many, yet they shall fall by the sword, and by flame, by captivity, and by spoil many days. And if we go back into Revelation, I believe it is also 13. Let's see. Revelation 13, verse 7, again speaking of the beast, the Antichrist. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. So again, we see another tie-in in Revelation regarding the beast to the prince that shall come, spoken of in the book of Daniel. And so we have, we have a prophecy in Daniel that is referring to a prince who will have a lot of power, who will be Roman, who will have an idol placed in Jerusalem, who will also make war against the saints and the people of God, and who will also, at the time, it seems, have the victory over them. And these things will kind of continue. If you look at my last video about Luke chapter 21, I mentioned there was another there was another version of that particular prophecy. I don't remember specifically where it is. Let me see if I can find it at the moment. Well, I'm not 100% sure exactly which one it's in, but if you look through the Gospels for the parallel passages to Luke 21, they'll reference the end of the world as well as when Jesus was talking about the destruction of the temple and the city. And one of the things he brings up in some of the parallel passages is the abomination of desolation. So we see this kind of tie-in between, there's the destruction of Jerusalem in that prophecy, which is the same as what is written in Daniel chapter 9 about what would happen after the Messiah was cut off. And then at some future point after that, you have the abomination of desolation that is being placed. And so, you just kind of have this tie-in throughout that whole prophecy. It's almost like Jesus was expanding on that prophecy in Daniel chapter 9, in Luke chapter 21, as well as its parallel passages, when he goes through, this is what is going to come to pass, and how you'll be able to know when what Daniel said about the destruction and the desolation of Jerusalem is going to occur. And then he also afterwards brings up, and then the abomination of desolation going on to the end of the world and his own return in power. So I don't want to go too much further with this because there's kind of a lot to get. But if you have any questions, if you have any comments, and especially concerns, if you see something that I missed or that I got wrong, I would appreciate it if you would just let me know in the comments. I hope you have a very good day, and may the Spirit of Truth guide you in understanding all these things. Have a great night.